Hello guys, my name is Bruno from the channel Bruno APS Data Fun. On last video we saw the Python code to bring data using Python from the WeatherBit and the OpenWeatherMap API into a Microsoft SQL database. And today we are going to start from the very beginning and take a look at the data sources and explore a little bit of how they are treated into the code. So let's start by using Postman. Postman is a great free tool that you can use to interact with remote APIs and take a closer look at your data sources before you start using them, and it's better than using the data directly into your browser. If you paste that link into your browser, it will work, but Postman gives you some better options that you can use. So let's start with WeatherBit. So you can see here I have the HTTPS API WeatherBit.io version 2.0. I'm only interested in the current weather forecast, city Burlington, country Canada, and my key. I'm blurring it out because, well, it's mine and no, you can't have it. So let's send a request to this API and see what we get as a response. And there we go. You can see you have a count of 1. So this 1 is because up here I said I only want the current. If I didn't put this here, it was going to bring me 7 entries, I believe, from the documentation. It's 7 days. So you can see some of the data that I got from here. You can see the temperature. It's the app temp. The city name, the country code. Let's see, the wind speed. The snow, I know I have on my code. The radiation, I don't have it. I have the sunrise and sunset times. Those times, I believe they are UTC times. I am in the time zone of Toronto, so they will need some adjustment. This will be a good exercise for when we enter data cleansing. You can see the wind direction, the wind speed that I'm using on the code. Um, Also, temperature is the same, I believe, as app temp. And anyway, you can identify some of the elements from the code in here. So, visualization. So this is what a request looks like. And this would explain why we used data 0 in the code. When we are going through the code, we are going to take a look at why we use data under square brackets and then a square bracket 0. We are going to talk about this. But this is the JSON response that we get from this URL. Okay, let's hop then into the next one, which is OpenWeatherMap response, where I got the feels like from. So as you can see here, there's no feels like. So I needed another to bring in another source to get that data. Okay, so right now you can see that I switched tabs and I have the URL up here for OpenWeatherMap with the weather for Burlington, California, following what the documentation and for OpenWeatherMap API states. And I have my key and I'm telling it that I want the units in the metric system. Otherwise, you would get miles per hour and inches instead of centimeters, but I prefer the metric system. So let's take a look at how this response looks. So let's send our request. There we go. So you can see here the coordinates, and the only field that I got from this one was the feels like. So you can see when we go into the code that I use a square brackets main, square brackets feels like. So if I wanted, let's say the wind speed, I would use square bracket winds, wind, square bracket speeds, and the same for the rest of it. So if I wanted, let's say clouds, I would use square bracket clouds, square bracket all. So, but since it doesn't have a counter and it only brings me the current weather as default, I don't have to use the numeric value in square brackets as I did on WeatherBit. And we are going to discuss this when we take a look into the code. So that's the JSON response for OpenWeatherMap. So right now, let's take a look at it on the Python code I prepared. I separated just the variables and printed all the responses so we can see how I am getting this data and how I am storing it in variables before sending it to the database. Okay. All right. So we have our Python code in here. Let me make this terminal a little smaller so we can see everything. Um, let's leave it. Yeah, let's leave it like so. So we have a little bit of more space in the screen. So you can see that the first change that I made, I created a file named keys.py and I am importing the keys, import keys. There we go. So this is a security tip in case you want to not leave your keys in an open code and do it differently. You can use a different file and restrict access to that file only to the Python code so no one can open it and have access to your API keys. If security on the previous video was one of your concerns, this is one of the many ways to address it. Um, so I am calling the WeatherBit key and the OpenWeather key. You can see that I renamed the variable and I'm bringing from keys OpenWeather key and WeatherBit key. And in no moment is going to be open or visible for you. So this is one of the security approaches that I made. So we have here our city, our country. So what I did right now, I am printing the request that I make to the WeatherBit JSON, and I get the WeatherBit URL, and I am printing the request that I make to the OpenWeatherMap JSON. It's called OpenWeather JSON, the variable, and at the end, I am adding a double N, so we have a double line break, one to go to the next line, the second one to leave a space, so we don't have them mixed up. So on this one, I'm getting the JSON response from both of them. And again, I am storing them. I'm storing them in a variable and printing them on the screen. And I am printing all the variables. Now, remember that I told you about the main feels alike and that we're going to use the main. Now, why do we have this 0 right here? Let me open a notepad really quick. Notepad++ will do. So in Python, let's make it a little smaller. In Python, when you have data from a tuple or from a database or anyway, when you have sequential data that you want stored, let's say that 7 days a week we would have Sunday, Monday, uh, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So this would be how we count normally. But in Python, if you want the very first set of data, it's going to be different. The 0, is the first position. Then you would go, if you want the data from Monday, you would going to be bring number 1 and then number 2 for the next one and number 3. So 0 in Python is not a representation, at least in this scenario, is not a representation of emptiness, is a representation of the very first data set stored that you want to bring. I hope this made sense. If not, we can address it in another video. So let's run this code and see what we have on screen, and then we can run a couple of tests, play around with it a little bit. So there we go. So you can see here that for this two, I get a response 200. It means that they ran okay, and that we got a 200 and HTTP 200 OK response from it. Now in here you can see that the count is 1, and this is the very first set of data that we got. It shows count as 1, and since we wanted to bring from data, you can see that I'm using here data on the position 0, which means the first record from data. If you don't put the 0 here, it won't work. So on several APIs, you will have to use this approach. On some of them, you won't, but from what I learned is that most of them, at least most of the ones that I worked with, you will need to specify the position that you want to bring the data from. So you can see here, you can identify all of them. So temp is temperature. Let's find our temp here. Temp is here. So I'm using this naming code, city name, country code, and etc. So those are the ones that I'm storing here. So let's say I wanted to store something that it's not here. Let's say I wanted to add the icon. I would have to add here icon, data, 0 icon, and so on and so forth. And in here, I am printing all the variables. So you can see that my city is Burlington, country CA, temperature 14, precipitation is 0, pressure, and so on and so forth. So this is what this code is doing. And this is the data that afterwards in the code. So let's open the rest of the code. So this is the data that I'm using in here to insert into the database with this tuple, if you remember from the last video. All right, guys, so this has been it for this video. Just remember, have fun with the data. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section below. As in the last video, I am going to leave the GitHub to this code so you can play around with it, do your own thing. If you are an experienced Python developer, I am challenging myself with the Python code and learning a lot from the language. If you have tips and tricks or something that you want to share, if you want to participate on one of the videos or on the channel so we can go through it together, just contact me on the comment section below. And remember to have fun with the data. Data is fun, and hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a like, subscribe if you want to, and see you on the next video.